Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension, Season 3, Harmonizing Light and Shadow to Embody Your Mystical Power and Purpose. I'm your host, Waxela Sananda, and today I will be interviewing the beautiful Kimberly Maska. Welcome, Kimberly.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
I'm so happy to have you, and I'm excited for this conversation today. So before we dive in, I would love to just share a little bit about your background so people understand what you're up to in the world and a little bit about who you are. Kimberly Maska is the publisher of Spiritual Business Magazine, founder of the it's actually Spiritual Biz
Yeah.
Coaching Certification Program, and CEO of Spiritual Biz Publishing, the publisher for authors dedicated to shifting consciousness. She is a two-time international best-selling author with her books, Are You a Spiritual Entrepreneur? And Chaos, a Wake-Up Call for Lightworkers. She uses her 20 years of business development experience, including 8 years on Wall Street, to show spiritual coaches how to make money while they meditate. That sounds fun.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. I'm like, oh, that's helpful. I'd like to know that. So I'd love to just kind of start at the beginning and ask you a little bit about your origin story and how did you come to create Spiritual Biz
Yeah.
and tell me about your spiritual background in there because I'd love to know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's so many turning points and what gets us to where we are today, isn't it there? So I guess my beginning one, I'll go way back. And so I've always been incredibly intuitive. My mom and I used to communicate non-verbally all the time, and I just knew things. And I don't know, that was how my mom was, and she was a healer. She could like hold someone's hand and know what was wrong and heal them. I mean, it was crazy. So I just kind of thought that's what people did. And so I ended up on my path though, away from that, working on Wall Street and doing all sorts of crazy hours and crazy things. And I got to the point when I was on Wall Street of just I was so miserable. My hair was falling out. I was eating too much. I was drinking too much. I wasn't sleeping. It was a mess. And so I made the decision to leave. But I had all this business expertise, but I'm like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And it had never even crossed my mind to be able to take my spirituality and bring it in. And I just kind of went on my path even after I left, and I kind of bounced around figuring stuff out. And then was going through more of my awakening. My mom was sick. My mom was transitioning to the other side. And so that kind of right before that happened, I think intuitively I knew, and I started really studying all the great leaders and getting myself prepared for that is really what happened, because I'm an only child. She was my best friend. So I really had to be prepared for that transition. So I started really getting into stuff. And then right after she transitioned, I went to all these like spiritual retreats and just trying to be really as grounded as I could be and really connecting with source and her on the other side and everything. And in that process, I was meeting these incredible healers and light workers. And then I was like, wow, you really got to get your message out there, because my mind automatically thinks like business stuff. And I hadn't realized it till this moment that I actually can see a business as part of my intuitive gift, is to be able to talk to someone and just know what they need to change to make it all just kind of line up. And so I was talking with these healers and I'm like, well, why aren't you out there? Why doesn't everybody know about who you are and what you do? And in the back of my mind, I'm also thinking, gosh, if this had been out sooner, or I had known, I could have brought this to my mom and maybe helped her, because there was a lot of emotional imbalance within her, which is what caused the cancer and everything to just kind of manifest and grow. And so, um, and when I would talk to the healers about that, they would just look at me like cross-eyed and just be like, what are you talking about? Like, how do you create a business? Like, that's left brain. That's not what I do, and not in my wheelhouse. And I was like, but it's easy. It's not that hard. And so that's how I kind of came to the conclusion of what I was supposed to do. And it took me a while, but I was like, oh, well, I could do that. I mean, and then I started to really realize that I could just see someone's business, and I get the little pings about what they should be doing or how many books they're going to have or what have you. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, how cool is that though? That I get to take all that intuitive stuff that I really hadn't thought of and as a way to do a business, and I can now do that and then help people do the same thing, which is really cool. And so that's how I got here.
Oh, I love that. So you're using your intuition to guide other people's businesses and
Yeah.
help them. That's so powerful. And I really kind of wanted to dig into the fact that you know, one of the hardest things probably of your life was your mom's death, and that you actually sounds like you use that as a launching experience to dive into your own spiritual awakening and unfolding. And that to me, you know, the name of this summit is Harmonizing Light and Shadow to Embody Your Mystical Power and Purpose. And it's one of those situations where that's exactly what you did. I'm sure, and you kind of brushed over that really quickly, but you know, would you share a little bit about how you
Yeah.
unfolded your purpose in that experience?
Yeah. It was interesting. And again, we always know everything happens for a reason. So I think I was getting the pings early on about just really getting myself grounded and ready for whatever was coming, and not knowing she was sick. So my mom actually transitioned within 26 days of us discovering that she was ill. But like, my mom was never healthy. I do not actually ever remember my mother being healthy. She was always not well. And so it was just kind of something you got used to. And but I just started getting these pings about really getting myself grounded, and my life just wasn't where it should be. It just still things were still out of alignment. So I started down this path, and I went to Deepak Chopra's center. If anyone ever gets a chance to do that, that's amazing. That was a huge transition. That week that I spent there at his center was a complete transformation for me. That was like, ta-da! I came out a completely different person, and actually immediately started changing things in my life. And then my mom got sick, and I was already reading, all the books and all the Deepak Chopras and the Eckhart Tolle and, the Power of Now. And I was just reading all of this stuff. Everything I could get my hands on, I was like consuming, because I had never, it's weird. My whole life, I never had a mentor, and it was more like I just figured stuff out on my own, and that was just how it always worked. So to pick up like a self-help book, when people would say, "Oh, here's a book," I'm like, I don't know, I'm super successful, I'm on Wall Street, blah blah blah. I don't need any help. And that's how I would kind of push it off. And then as I was finally ready and open to receiving that information, it was at the perfect time, and it actually helped me get through the transition of my mom. Because I don't, if I hadn't been on that path and meditating and just being in the present moment, I probably would have been a raging alcoholic. I think that would have been my go-to. That's what it would have been. And so being able to be present, and I helped my dad. My dad, my parents were married 43 years when that happened. And so my dad actually totally credits me for helping him learn how to meditate and be present and see things in a different light. Because I don't think he would have made it 6 months after she transitioned if we
Mm.
hadn't been working with him on all of that. So it was yeah, it was amazing to get through that and then think how powerful all of this is. Not just the intuitive part. Like, yes, we can all be intuitive and be empaths and stuff, but really knowing what it means to be a spiritual being in this dimension and what we have to do to be able to make this life amazing. That's the difference, I think, that I didn't really fully grasp until that time. And then I was like, oh, and then it opened up for me. It became very easy for me. Easy, that's an interesting word. Not really easy, but I got it. I guess it came to me. I was like, oh, I see that. Oh, I see that. And we're always growing and going through this process, but I could see all of those steps. And then when my mom did transition, it really kept me centered. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't been on that path. And so didn't realize, gosh, if other people knew this, or if she'd known that, because she had carried a lot of anger and resentment and just stuff, carrying her past forward. And I'm like, gosh, if she had known that. And as I was starting to do my studying, I remember one time so clearly that she got mad at my dad for something. And it was probably the last few months of her life. And I don't even remember what it was, but I remember having assimilated enough of the stuff I was reading to look at her and say, why are you mad at dad for something that happened to you like 40 years ago? Because I knew what the trigger was for her. And she looked at me, and it was like the proverbial slap in the face. It was like, because she like didn't even know she was doing it.
Mhm.
And she was like, oh, and I'm like, oh, she had no idea. That was just her mode of reacting. And so started to think, I'm like, gosh, if she had this information earlier, she'd known about this, she could have shifted the way she thinks, which probably would have shifted the energy in her, it would have shifted the energy in her body, which probably would have never brought on the cancer, because she was riddled with it by the time she transitioned. And she knew She knew. She just wasn't doing anything about it. She was ready to make the transition over. So just it's interesting. So I'm like, gosh, this has to get out there. So it's part of my passion is to not only for the people out there to get out there and create businesses and get bigger, but the people that are kind of thinking about it. I'm like, we need you more, especially right now more than ever. We need spiritual people and spiritual leaders to step up and step out to help guide people through this craziness that we call planet Earth.
Yes, indeed. And you brought up so many important points there in that, first of all, as spiritual people and spiritual seekers, it's so important to do our own work first and notice. This is a huge part of what I train in Ascension training is everything that we're lashing out about is usually something from, it's not that thing. It's not, the person in front of us that we're upset with. It's a program that we're carrying from something probably in our childhood or even that we came in with. It's a repeating program. And if we can reprogram those, then we don't have those reactions in the same way. And you definitely tapped into that. But and I want to get into your book, Chaos, a Wake-Up Call for Light Workers, because that really is, it sounds like, foundational to this work as well, and allowing the chaos to sort of be a springboard for your opening, your alignment, and your harmonizing. But it's not from hiding from the chaos, is it?
No, it's not. It's that moment where we have to really look at the chaos. I mean, from chaos comes order, right? That's this balance. We're going to find the balance between the order and the chaos. And so we have to look at the chaos that's around us and be able to pick the pieces and use it to be able to transition into this place of peace and this place of balance. And so I think one thing that people try to do is that the chaos happens and we just walk away from it. I don't want to be part of that, or we shut it off and just, I don't need that, especially when it's the newly awakened spiritual people that just want to be in the 5D. I was like, I'm just going to meditate and I'm not going to pay attention to any of that stuff. And it's like, well, that's really not helping you fully, because we need to be an integrated whole human being. We can't just be just in the 5D. We're on a 3D planet. We have to be able to engage with everything. And all of this is here to help us expand and grow. So every time we see chaos, we have to be like, how cool that there's chaos, because that means my higher self has brought me here for a reason. And I'm going to expand from this experience if I allow it to happen. And that to me that's really what the book is about. And the book was a download that I wrote it in 2 weeks. It came to me right as the whole coronavirus nonsense was happening. And before we really understood what was happening, when we thought it was actually a real thing. And so I got this like download of information. And I was like, this book has to get out there. And so I wrote it because I could see everybody panicking, and I can see, I talk about it. And I actually, Eckhart Tolle had done a video about it, which kind of inspired for one of the chapters, was that if you don't have your house in order, your physical house, your mental house, your financial house, whatever it is, if you're not in order and it's on sand and it's wobbly, then that's when we worry. But if you have things in order, you don't worry. Like, I don't worry about getting sick because I'm super healthy. Like, I don't worry about that because it's not even a potentiality for me because I take care of my physical house. And so it's like, then you got to look at your financial house. You got to look at each piece. And I think whenever chaos occurs, that is a time for us to step out and step up and see, what do we have to do? What do we have to address? That's why the chaos is there. Maybe we've gotten a little too complacent with how things are. Everything's easy peasy. So the chaos comes in to make us step up. And that's really what the book is about, is having that awareness of what the chaos is creating around us, and that it is here to push us into greatness so that we can step up and really be who we are. So the first half of the book talks about stepping out, and the second half of the book actually gives you some business tips to actually step out as a spiritual entrepreneur.
I love that. And now more than ever, I mean, I feel like the time is so, just the energetically is pushing people to be their truth and to be their purpose. And that does not mean that every single person has to go start their own business, but it does mean if there's something in you that is just here to be expressed, and you know that you came here with a purpose and you don't know how to get that out into the world, it might be a business, it might be a book, it might be something else, but this is the time where the energy is so perfect to launch those purpose works from our soul and from our hearts. And I think that's what you're all about. How do you guide someone, or do you ever have someone come to you who's just not sure, and maybe do you have some people where you guide them not to do a business, but that there's maybe some other path for them?
Yeah, so the way I've actually structured my company and everything to serve, and this is kind of recent. So I have what I call my spiritual biz boot camp, and that's really for people who want to make like 15K a month. So I'm serious about the business part. So it's usually someone that has a business. And what was happening in that realm was that I was getting new people, and they were struggling because I was actually going too fast with what I was creating. And I realized that, wait, they were so new, they didn't even know how to be coaches yet. Like, they didn't really know how to take this idea of I want to serve and get it out there. So what I did is I created a new program called Spiritual Biz Coaching Certification Program for the new people. So as long as they have a passion for being able to just, I know I have to serve and I know I have something, then I take them through a process. So it's a really unique process. It actually has a lot to do with my intuitive gifts. And we do a call that really gets them clear, and we always nail it. And when we nail it, they're usually like, oh my God, that's it. And I've had people who have worked with all sorts of coaches, and they just still don't know who their tribe is till they get to me. And then they're like, oh my God, that's it. And some people laugh, some people cry, some people just scream, and they're like, oh my God, because they finally figured it out. And we know, because it's also like we get this yes from source that also tells us that we're on the right path. And so so I take them through that process. So a lot of times they don't really know who their tribe is, but they know they have to serve. So that's what I look for from my clients in particular. And if someone's more of a, I just want to create a church, or they're more of an activist, or they want to do a nonprofit, those I wouldn't say are my clients. And I'll say, well, maybe that's the way for you to go, but I'm really talking about a business, because a business is a vehicle to serve. And even though, like, people say, well, I want to create this nonprofit, but to me, first of all, like 85% of nonprofits fail. And then they fail because the energy exchange is wrong. Because we're always asking, can you give me money? Can you give me money? Can you give me money? And you're asking for all this money before you can actually create anything to serve. So the energy balance is off, which I think is why most of them fail. So my philosophy on that is create a business and then fund your nonprofit with your business, because then you can create the money, and then you're not having to go ask people for money, because that's a weird, that's where that energy exchange gets weird. You're like, well, why am I giving you money, and what are you doing? And so that's why most of them fail. So if someone wants a nonprofit, I usually just say, well, why don't you start a business first and then use the funds for the nonprofit? But most people, I mean, when they come to me, they know they want to really step out. So it's very rare do I speak to anyone that's like, well, I might have a gift, or I'm not sure. But usually they're like, I know I have something to share. I'm not clear how, but I know I have to. And those are the clients that show up for me. Oh, and they're also always usually channels too, because if you come to me, you're almost always a channel, whether you know it or not.
Wow. Oh, I love that. That's so interesting. And, I really, I love that you brought up that, about how money, well, okay, first of all, let's start here. There is this false idea in the spiritual community. Not everybody at this point, certainly a lot of people have overcome it, but like you mentioned, the people who are newly awakened and they just want to hang out, like outside of their body and not really be grounded. And then a lot of times out of that comes this false belief that money is part of the 3D world, and that's not what I want to be a part of. So I'm going to renounce money. And then they end up, whatever. That's fine for some people, but I mean, we're really about balancing and harmonizing the different worlds, and not that 5D doesn't include money. I mean, there's certainly a place for exchange there, and money is energy when you look at it from, a certain standpoint, to have, like you touched into, proper exchange. and not, you can't expect people to just give all the time. And and also it doesn't feel good to just ask all the time. And like if it is a nonprofit. So having the business allows you to contribute to the people you're working with. And I love that you brought that up, because business as generosity, business as your purpose work and your way to serve. And certainly I've found that in my business. I mean, only a handful of the people that I interact with or that I have on my list and that I have on my social media ever become clients. And I'm sure you can relate to that, but I'm always pouring into the community as a whole, because that's how I give. And then some of them that are naturally meant to work with me will naturally end up being a client. And I'm sure, it's the same for everyone who's doing their business that way, but it's so rewarding. I can pour into my community and I don't need them. I don't need everybody to give me something back. And I think that's really important to look at energetically, in a balanced exchange, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. The money thing is always fascinating to me because I'll get all sorts of hate mail about talking about spirituality and money and business altogether. Like people always say, well, spiritual business is an oxymoron. And the way I look at that, I says, well, why is it okay for us to make money when we're out of alignment with who we are at our core, out of alignment with source? Why is it okay to go to a job we can't stand and be miserable and be in the shackles of a corporation or something like that, where we're just not living our purpose at all, and maybe even doing harm to the world? Because places we work, if we look at, I'm going to use a fast food restaurant, right, where they're just poisoning us. And so why is it okay to have that job, but it's not okay to take your gifts or your God-given gifts to you and use that to be able to serve people? Like, it doesn't make any sense when people try to say, like, why are you doing that? I'm like, why are you doing the other thing? That doesn't make any sense. And once you can start to see that and realize that your business is the vehicle to serve, and that you're able to then take that money and give back. If you say, oh, I don't need that much, which I think is a cop out anyway. So I think that's kind of you're almost doing a little disservice to yourself and source there too, because with the more abundance we have, the best version of ourselves we can be. The more we can study, the more retreats we can go on. We can spend 3 months in an ashram if we want. We can do all those things when we have abundance flowing in, but then also taking that abundance to be able to serve. So I even have, for my clients, I have what I call 10,000 Hearts Award. So for my clients who are donating, tithing out $10,000 or more a year, get a special award for that, because the whole point is you build these businesses to be able to give back.
Yes, yes. And that's the thing. Like first of all, when you're doing work that you love, our time here in these lifetimes are short, and every day and every minute is sacred. And the idea that we have to go work a job that doesn't fill us up, that we don't love, is that's taking away from the sacredness of our time here and what we could be contributing, number one. And then the second part is when we get to do our purpose work and love our work and I love my work. I love every minute of it. I love, of course there are things that are harder for me, that aren't my favorite, but I'm so grateful to get to do my purpose work as a business. And that adds, like, I would be doing this anyway, like
Right.
if I didn't get paid. I mean, I don't get paid for summits, but I would be doing the work I do regardless of the pay, because I love doing it. And I think if we can just help people shift their mindset around, like, why would you put your sacred time into anything that doesn't light you up, that doesn't make your heart happy?
Yeah.
And then you get to contribute, and you can be a social entrepreneur. You can make your business actually be of service to others in the world. And, or if it's not, if it's not directly social entrepreneurship, like you said, giving, we can create generosity and give back to those places and people and causes that speak to our heart. And doing that through, funding that through our purpose work is really foundational for a purpose-filled, balanced, harmonized life. So I do love the conversation and making the conversation about money a spiritual conversation.
Yeah.
That I think is really special. And I love that you're all about that. Um, let's see, where do we want to go from here? I did not know that you had a book that you published books. So is it actually a publishing company?
It is. It is a publishing company. So, and it's funny because it's shifting. So this is what's so cool is that when you, especially as a spiritual entrepreneur, right? Like I get downloads of information all the time. And so it's like, oh, this is where you should go. And so it's funny because I have created this publishing company and it's been kind of sitting there. And I have a few clients that have gone through it and what have you, because my whole, as you can tell, I talk about money a lot for people. And so when you're creating your business, you want to be able, of course, to create money. Well, then I find that you have authors who spend thousands of dollars to get their book out there, and they get their book out there and then it's like crickets. No one really reads it. They're not making any money off it. And it can be great if it's like a legacy thing, but you really want to be able to get the message out there. That's the whole point. So I created the publishing company with that intent. So it's mostly for my clients or someone who actually has a business already, because you have to be able to get it out there. And if you're just a first time author and you don't have a social media following, I know how difficult that can be, but we need to make some adjustments. And so so my initial intention with that was they come through my programs and through my mastery program and stuff, and then they're ready and it all kind of ties together. And it's recently shifted, and I'm working on this. This was a download I got just actually like 2 weeks ago. So the shift is here. You guys are gonna be the first to hear about it. But I'm actually going to turn it more into it still will be a publishing company, but I'm actually going to help people create their book funnels, because and this is a marketing term, I know, but it's really the flow of clients to you. So I'm going to show them how to actually make money from your book instantaneously and build your email list, which is your asset for your business, so that you can build your email list, have your book really get your message out, and be able to create abundance with it from the get-go instead of just hoping and waiting. Because it's interesting, the old process I was using, which totally works. So this top book up here, my Are You a Spiritual Entrepreneur book, that book's made me at least $110,000. And
Wow.
so which is really cool when you're like, oh, look at that. Like I know how to do that, but I think there's greater potential in this new download of information that I just received. And so I'm going to be actually, that's funny. I have a client who I'm going to use, and they don't even know it. I talked to them literally half an hour from now, and I'm going to surprise them and tell them that I'm going to guinea pig them. They're going to be my
Wow.
guinea pig for the process, and that I'll be doing my book that way. And that's how I'll be helping people, because I know that will work beautifully. And that way people can get their message out, get in front of more people, and be able to create abundance, and actually at the simultaneously create their email list, which is, again, is that main core asset of your business that you really want to have in place.
Wow. And this is so timely for me. I self-published a book. It literally just came out. It's on Amazon now this week,
Oh,
and
nice.
as we're
Congratulations.
recording. And it was downloaded, I received all of this information, and I never really expected to make money with it. But as you're speaking, I'm thinking, well, how many lives have been touched by your book if you've made $110,000
Right.
on it? And that being, for me, the money is secondary to, wow, if I sold that many books and people actually read the book, that would be affecting a lot of people's lives. The intention
Yeah.
of the book is to upgrade people's lives and give them the tools to do that. So I'm going to be consulting you on that.
Nice. Perfect.
Yeah, and I'm sure that so many of the viewers have written a book, or are, there's a book rolling around in there that they just
Yeah.
haven't gotten around to yet. And I've had people in my life say, I really want to write a book. How did you do that? And mine really came through very quickly in a, couple
Yep.
months. I came off of a 2-month trip, and then boom, the book showed up for me in a really powerful way.
Yeah.
So yeah, taking that idea of writing a book someday, once, whenever, fill in the blank, whenever I have all this, it doesn't ever, the someday is really hard to harness. So to make
No.
it like, okay, you can do this now. And not only that, you can actually make some money back on it. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is to get the message out. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I have clients who like I've got the book, and they published it before working with me and stuff, and it's just sitting there, and they've
Mhm.
sold like 50 copies, and it's like, and it's great, but I'm like, think of how many more lives you could change with that
Yeah.
message. And so I actually incorporate that into my spiritual biz coaching certification program. Part of their, I talk about their awakening arc and their awakening journey, and then I have them prep it so that it's actually the basis for their first book. Because every
Wonderful.
spiritual leader needs to have a book. That's what you're trying to get the message out. But you need a book. That's what you need to do. So yeah, so then the publishing company will help them get it out there in a big way.
Wonderful. Oh, I love that so much. And somewhere in the conversation, I heard you bring up the word channel, and that you feel like everyone who comes to you is a channel on some level, which makes me think you must consider yourself a channel. And of course you are. But I'd love to hear about that. What type of channel are you? What are you channeling, or where are you channeling from, or who?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And it's funny because I get this question in my coaching course a lot, because they're like, well, what does that mean? And they're like, do I need to be like Esther Hicks? And I'm like, well, in theory, we're all channeling, right? When we get that ping and that information, we're all channeling. But I have some clients that are channeling really specific entities. They're like, it's this body of beings from a different dimension in this area, or the Palladians, or the Lumerians, whoever it is. Sometimes they're very specific. For me, it's more of an instant of that flow, where I'm just in connection enough that I get this flow. And when it happens, usually a lot of times when I'm dealing with a client, or when I'm doing my monologues for my clients. So before every call, right at the beginning, I do a monologue about whatever I've received. It's basically like a little Abraham Hicks session, because right before I get on the call, I tap in and I'm like, oh, they need to hear this. And then I do a monologue, and then they're like, literally the whole group is like, oh my God, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. And so for me, it's not a specific being or anything or group of beings. It's really more just I'm in the moment, and in the moment I'm able to know what they need and to process that information. So, and I have a huge range. I have, certain clients they're channeling light language, and I have clients that are very specific to, these are the beings and entities I channel. And then other clients where it's just more in flow. Some people automatic write Jesus. Like, it's amazing when I say it, especially with the clients that are in the coaching program, because they're a little bit newer in their process. They may not have really thought about it. And then I actually say in the beginning of the course, I'm like, and if you're here, you're probably a channel. And then all I have to do is say that. It's almost like I'm giving them permission to acknowledge that they're a channel. And then all of a sudden things start happening for them. And they're like, oh my God, I got this information. And so it's just, I think it's really giving them permission to be able to say that that's what they are.
Yes, I so get that. I think as teachers and coaches and mentors, it is so permission based. And when you give a client permission to open up whether it's their intuition, their channel, their ability to write a book, it's that reflection of, I see you and I know that this is possible for you, and then they can see it when it's reflected back. Yeah, that's beautiful. And the upgrades are, there's just infinite. There's so much possibility when we go there.
Yep.
And that's one of the great reasons to hire a coach or a mentor. I mean, I've always got a coach. I don't really consider myself a coach as much as a mentor, but I wouldn't even want to not have a coach, because I need someone to reflect that back to me too.
Right, because we can't see it, no matter how evolved we think we are. We can't see all those little things. And so to have someone there to kind of reflect that back to you and give you permission and allow you to grow. I always say my clients in my coaching program go through actually a second awakening with me, because they come in, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke, but I say it enough that everybody knows that I say that they think they're spiritual, and then they come to work with me and they realize they're not as spiritual as they thought they were. And it's because there is this now up leveling of not only just being intuitive or kind of like the awakening gifts that we get as we're going through awakening process, but now it's the mastering of them, mastering how we speak, mastering like being discerning, who are we connecting with. Like I actually have like a little manifesto of what it means to be a spiritual leader, because there's certain rules that we need to follow as spiritual leaders. We can't say one thing and say I'm a spiritual coach and act this way. I'm like, something's amiss. So I try to really have created this kind of like manifesto for them, so that they have to agree that this is who I am as a spiritual coach. And there can be some wobbles sometimes, because they're like, oh, I really hold them in a high light and really make them step up. And so it actually turns into like a second awakening for them.
Wow, that's incredible. And, I totally agree with you in that when you're mentoring someone else, it's not do as I say, not as I do. And energetically, I think that that conveys, like, if I'm giving someone advice and I'm doing the opposite of what I say, is important to do in life, they're even, even if they don't know what I'm up to personally, there's energetically, I
Mm,
know.
yeah,
And because I know, the universe knows. And so it's there, and we hold a frequency.
yeah,
Everything holds frequency.
yeah,
And in the beginning, when you talked about your mother and how she had always been unhealthy, and how you recognized that she was rehearsing patterns from, you said, like 40 years ago. um I think it just shows everything is connected and everything is energy, and the way that we hold ourselves, the frequency that we hold, that we embody, that's the embodiment piece, is evident. And you don't have to be psychic to pick that up. You don't have to be that intuitive to, you can just feel a person's energy. And so, brings back that leadership piece of, I'm I'm going to be the best me, because I, for me, for
yeah,
me first, and then everybody else gets to benefit from that.
yeah.
And that, I feel like, is such a foundational element of all spiritual leadership.
Yeah, yeah, and kind of tying into that too is that I always say that creating a spiritual business is probably the most difficult thing you will ever do, because everyone can feel everyone's energy. It's not like when you're just in a regular business and you can kind of feel other people, but there's just this unawareness. But in what we do, there's a full awareness. You know exactly where everybody is energetically. At least I do. Like I have my, group of clients. There's like, I don't know, I think it's almost 30 people right now in my coaching program. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, I know exactly where everybody is. I can feel where they are. And it's so you can't kind of, I'm gonna say half-ass it in this world of being a spiritual leader. You can't, because they know where I am and I know where they are, and we mirror each other and we get each other to the next level. But if you're off vibrationally, then that's who you attract. And there's no other way around that. It's like law of attraction 101. So being able to take care of ourselves and manage our own energy is like the key piece, really, and foundation for creating your spiritual business.
Do you have like a key practice or something that you could share for managing and balancing your energy and
Sure.
keeping? Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be great.
So of course, we all know meditation, right? Of course, we should be doing that. But something, this was a little bit of a download I got the other day too, that was really cool. And I hadn't quite heard it this way. I'm sure it's out there. I was late to the party, but but for me, it came through this way, that when we have an experience that we can feel ourselves react. So first we need the awareness of, where are we feeling it? Because we feel it in our body before our brain even realizes what's going on, right? It's that primal thing. So, and we can start to create an awareness that we know where it is in our body as soon as it happens. Like someone, I don't know, cuts you off on the freeway or whatever it is, you get this immediate like feeling for you, and it's different for everybody. It could be in your stomach, your chest, wherever it is. And so what I'm doing now, and I'm teaching my clients, and it's awesome. And once you get this down, like seriously, nothing bothers you anymore. Is that it's about taking your power. It's the alchemy of the emotion, and really being able to transmute it and bring it back in. So a lot of times people will say like, I'm going to release that. I'm going to release it. And what happens when we tell the universe that we're going to release, the word lease is in there. And what is leasing doing? Leasing means you're renewing, you're keeping it there. So when we release something, it actually just bounces back. So if you think about how many times something has happened and you say, I'm just going to release that emotion, and then it comes back and it comes back and it comes back. And it's what's the problem is that we're telling the universe that we want it back because we're releasing it. And so what we have to do is we actually have to take that emotion and transmute it, and then take the power back from it. So here's the process I give my clients. When you first have the awareness of the thing that's going to trigger you. We all know what the things are. There's some certain thing that triggers us all the time. So I always say, take the biggest one, or maybe the smallest one, but take the biggest one of the things that really bugs you, that it's a certain person or a certain situation. We know that trigger is going to happen. And when it happens, feel it in your body. Have the awareness to know what's going to happen. Feel it in your body first, and then just take a deep breath, and then so that you're not reacting, right? We can't react. We have to just, oh, there it is, give it acknowledgement and actually give it appreciation, because this is your higher self bringing you to a spot so that you can grow, so that you can expand. So it's about having the awareness, putting yourself in that situation because you know what's going to happen anyways. Feel it in your body the second that it happens. Take a deep breath, give it appreciation, and then I do this visualization where I actually pull the energy out of my body, that kind of whatever you're feeling, that tightness or whatever it is. I pull it out and I put it in my hand, and I visualize it kind of just grouping there in like a little ball. For me, it's usually like a dark smoky thing because it's usually not a good emotion, right? Although that's putting judgment on it, so we got to watch that too. There's so many pieces to this, so we can't like judge it. We just have to be like, okay, this is what's coming up. This is really cool because I get to expand. So I put it in my palm, and then I get it all out and I breathe so I can relax, and I'm doing the appreciation of it. I give it huge appreciation. I turn it to love and light. And then I actually, when I do that, I see it now, see it as like sparkly, glittery things. So then I take it like a water balloon and I pop it on my head, and I actually take my power back from it. And I actually say, I am taking my power back from this emotion, and just feeling it go through your body and just taking your power back. And if that same thing triggers you again 5 minutes later, you do the process again 5 minutes later. And if you keep doing that, it's incredible that the stuff that bothered you just doesn't show up. I don't know how to describe it. It's just, it blows your mind when you're just like, oh my God. And I actually was just thinking about this yesterday. There was a certain situation that would occur that would drive me crazy. And I started doing that over and over and over. And then the other day I was like, that hasn't happened in like months. Like it just hasn't even come into my reality because I have been able to, alchemize, take that emotion, transmute it, transcend it, and take my power back from it. So that's an amazing little process.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And okay, everyone's got to try that process. And then one more question that I have for you is, I love that you show spiritual coaches how to make money while they meditate. Could you share about that?
Sure. So the making money. So this is the interesting thing. Making money while we meditate, right? Well, we're doing something else. I say you wake up in the morning, you look at your bank account, you go off, you meditate, you come back, and you have more money in your account. And so that actually takes though some of that business marketing side of things, which I've created a way where it's not quite as daunting as it is that if you could just go to like a regular marketing person and they're talking funnels and upsells and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it gets very overwhelming. And so what I've done is I've actually created a process to just show my clients, here's exactly what you do. And being able to do it within the spiritual realm, because when you're looking, especially like ad copy and stuff like that for the world, like it's very different spiritually. Right? We don't respond the same way. Some of that feels very 3D. Our clients are like, "Ooh, that doesn't feel good." Like someone says like, I don't know, what's the right wording on stuff like, get it now. And you're like, "Ooh, that doesn't feel right." So it's about how do I'm actually in the process of testing a ton of copywriting so that we can know what works best in our industry, because we are a unique industry and we think differently, we feel things vibrationally. And if it doesn't feel right, it's not going to work. And I think what happens a lot of times is like a spiritual entrepreneur will work with a traditional marketing person. In fact, I get this a lot of time. People come to me because I've like worked with different business coaches, and all the business coaches do is tell them like, tone down the woo woo. And I'm like, no, turn it up. Like they're asking you to be like someone you aren't, and that's why it doesn't work. And so with me, I'm like, we fully embody that, but then we create the process so that the making money while you meditate can happen, and creating their different programs and things like that so that they can put stuff on autopilot and have the money flow in. And then that's exciting. That's what's really fun to watch.
Awesome. Yes, I love that. I love that concept. And I'm an avid meditator, so it sounds fun. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we close?
I think that kind of wraps it up. And really, guys, just remember, if you have the inkling, that is your inspiration from source. So if you've got the inspiration to move forward on something, that is source giving you and your higher self tapping you on the shoulder, being like, go look over here, go look over here, and follow the inspiration, and don't let your human get in the way. The human then brings in the fear, the doubt, the worry, the what ifs. I don't know if I can, like all of that starts to come in. And then it, like, to me, it's heartbreaking when I see someone that comes to us and they're like, I really want to create a business, and they get so close to, whether it's enrolling in my program or just taking that first step, whatever it is, and then the human gets in the way and they doubt themselves and fear and blah 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 and everything, and then they don't do anything, and then they end up not serving, and that just, it's really heartbreaking to me. So follow your inspiration. That is source tapping you on the shoulder saying this is where you need to go. Just follow the inspiration and you will be fine. If you follow it, you almost can't go wrong, unless of course you allow the human to get in the way, to worry and all that other stuff. So let's just follow the inspiration, whatever that is for you. Follow your inspiration, because we need more people to be inspired on this planet so we can shift our vibration.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much, Kimberly. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. I know that it will be helpful for so many people, and I just appreciate your generosity. So thank you.
And thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
I just love that I get to share these amazing teachers and speakers with all of you. And foundationally, I just want everyone to know you are not alone. There's so much support for you on your path, wherever you are and wherever you're going. So thank you for being here. Have a beautiful day or evening. Namaste.